Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another video. Um, this video is another video in my Bob and Nikki series. It's been a minute since I've come back to that. I ran into some problems at the beginning of the year. Haven't had the best start to the new year, but things are getting better now. And it's put me behind with a lot of things, not to mention my work and my Bob and Nikki schedule, but being down for a few weeks has caused me to have a little more reading time, and I wanted to put in some time on the series. I'm going to talk about the next two books. We left off in the last installment with book 25, I believe. And this is actually, we left off with book 24. This is book 25 and 26. They're part of an ongoing plot arc about the same group of people. So I figured I would talk about them together since their story is so seamlessly between the two books. And it continues after that, but it kind of comes to a natural progression after book 26. So let me give you some background. The next book that we have to talk about is Jive, which is book 25 in the series. There are now 52 as I speak to you in January of 2025. There are 52 books. So I'm roughly halfway through the series at this point. Um, this is not quite the point where I stopped the first time. I stopped on book 29 reading it the first time. But I did listen to the Audible and read this time. So I do have a few more Audible books than I did when I did this the first time. But in any case, this volume picks up where the last volume left off quite literally. It picks up after the barbecue. So the crew is back on the Gene, back on the surface, everybody's back on their ships. And Bob gets a distress call, which is what pulls them off. Bob gets a distress call to go check out a tumbling ship. He finds that they go out there and they find that it is Nikki's old friend from the academy. She's gotten in some trouble. This is Remy. You might remember her, experienced coder, not necessarily hacker, but she codes and tries to keep people out of systems. Remy's gotten in trouble on an undercover mission that she's on for the Commonwealth, and her ship is in a bad way. She's in a bad way. Turns out that her ship was taken over by what the crew initially believes to be a rogue AI. They try to talk to it, they try to use all the bomb saucer repair techniques on it. Nothing's working. He goes and he talks to the AI and gets it to open up to him. Basically, she's scared that if they find out she's woken up, that she'll be destroyed. So Bob manages to convince her that she's not going to be destroyed, that in fact she's she's going to be fine, that they're going to work together, and he gets together. Bob gets the rogue AI together with the bots and with Eve, who you might remember is the ship that Bob used to ride in on with all his adventures in the early days, that Nikki used to pilot and Bob used to go on crazy rescue missions with. So they get that together, and the book focuses on the development of that, which is one of the strong suits in this volume. We also have a subplot um, with Andre, because Andre now has a girlfriend, in the Earth firefighters. They've gone back to Earth. They're helping people on Earth. Part of their picket duty ships help with natural disasters. So they help first responders, firefighters, police officers, things like that. Andre has made friends with a firefighter, and he now has a girlfriend, and her name is Rachel. And so we have a subplot that involves Rachel. Rachel eventually decides to come on board ship, and shenanigans ensue there. We have another subplot with Bob's kids, the two younger ones, Gus and Becky. Gus is learning all about engine and tinkering, and we have a subplot that involves this new planet that the new AI comes from. And so we have the new planet that they're at, we have the AI, we have the Bob and Nikki plot, we have the Andre plot going on. And toward the end of the book, we get this idea of this new creature. They don't have names yet. We call them the natives, but they're smaller. And this presumably is one of the natives who likes to start fires, because they are a primitive, stone-aged group of people who have stone spheres, and there's large cats on the island that like to eat them and attack them, so they come after them. There's also snakes on the island, so there's a subplot with that, along with all the usual occurrences aboard ship. So that's what's going on in this volume. I like the parts of the series that do this, that deal with interactions with alien races. So we see that with the Starfoot people on Charlie's planet. So back in Charlie's planet and Starfoot, we see that in monkey business when we're dealing with the monkeys. We see that in Let's Make a Deal and the True Squirrels books. And we see that again here. And so this is part of the series that I really like the most, when we get to see the new races and the new people that the crew meet, as well as start to see the crew interact with other people. I think Jerry Boyd writes that very well. He writes crew interactions very well. These books are less repetitive than some of the early ones. We still have some of the urban jokes. We still have all of the banter that we're known for, but it's a little bit less repetitive than some of the other content that you've seen. Moving along to the next book, I'm going to stop sharing this one at this point, and I'm going to share the next book in the series. This is Fort Scratchy. This is book 26. And this book continues the story. So we have the young native fire starter who comes aboard ship. There's a whole incident that takes place. She comes aboard the ship, and we see her dealing with all of that. We see her trying to adjust. And another thing that he writes, Jerry Boyd writes really well in the series, is crew interactions and trying to help Firestarter get acclimated to the crew, trying to help her learn to talk, figure out what's going on with how the crew works, how the company works. And Fort Scratchy is taken because the bots go down to the surface of the planet and they're trying to find a way to protect the cats from protect the natives, excuse me, from the cats. So they build this fort, and it's based on Fort Apache, hence Fort Scratchy, because the cats use the fort's walls to sharpen their claws and, of course, try to get over and reach their prey. So uh, it has to do with that. There's a whole subplot that revolves around that. That's really good, and just this is not edge of your seat fiction, as I've mentioned before, but it's very consumable, very bingeable. It takes minimal thought, but there are a lot of threads that you kind of go, well, I wonder if he's going to come back to that and develop that into something. But Firestarter does become a crew member but she then decides to go back to the planet and live in the fort. There's another whole subplot that involves two groups of these natives, the people who came and explored and are now on the planet that you're used to, and the people who didn't ever leave the ship and didn't ever explore. There's a whole group of people that are caught in basically kind of like suspended animation, and they haven't. So there's a whole thing that needs to happen where they need to be woken up. We haven't seen that yet, but that's in part of the purposes here. We're seeing we have a stint where there's a group in the gym, and there's now a gym bots that help them. So there's Bruce is the main sensei of Bob, but there are other people who help him. So we see Bob's physical fitness and his arts developing. We also see some of the other characters developing their skills. That was one thing that Bob suggests in this book. But it's fun. This book is fun because you get to see kind of, I think it's a nice blend of the earlier books where you see everybody working together and doing things, but you see it on the ship and you see how everybody has projects and they find things to do. But you also see a growing sort of unease on Bob's part because the bounties, not that the bank accounts aren't healthy, but the bounties that they're used to sort of collecting on a regular basis have dried up. And he's like, I am not only, captain of the fleet, but I'm also the manager, the CEO of BSR, and I have to keep this thing afloat. So toward the end of this book, we see him delegating. There's several projects. There's the Fort Scratchy planet project kind of thing to get the natives settled. There's some islands that are further on the planet that don't have the same cat problem that they're trying to relocate people to. There is a group of people that need to be woken up, so he leaves John behind to do that. There's another subplot that involves a situation with Topper, which comes up toward the end of this book, which leads into what the next book's going to be about. And then we have the whole purpose of sort of finding funding sources for for the company itself. So it's kind of a nice little, so these two volumes together are kind of a nice cozy thing, but there's a lot of plot threads that kind of, they don't tie up, kind of go forward. And then you start to have other plot threads sort of come out from there. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the series goes from here. And I think that's part of the charm of these books is you never quite know what's going to come up for who, but you always know that everybody is going to be taken care of with that. And I think that is a reason to continue reading a series and definitely to continue following these discussions. Having read the next book before, which is Trifecta, we hear about these three specific sort of missions that Bob has kind of sent everybody on. It's kind of the next thing that happens. So it's kind of different in that way because you have definitely different sections of the book that are all focused and they all come back together at a particular time. But I'll be talking to you about that when I reread the book. And until next time, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, that you're well, that if you're following the series, that you're enjoying it, and that if you do pick up these books, it's a nice way to while away an afternoon or two per book, and they're pretty cheap on Amazon Kindle. They're like $3 each, so they're worth looking into if you like the series and if you liked this little discussion of mine. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in my next video, Lord willing, very soon. Thank you very much. Bye for now.